The Tempest, Act 1, Scene 2, lines 218 to 284. Earlier, we heard from Ariel about how he created havoc on the ship and on its occupants. In this session, we will see what really happened to the occupants and also learn about Ariel himself. Let us now listen to the audio clip of the lines. Please follow the lines in your own textbooks.
Not a hair perished, on their sustaining garments not a blemish, but fresher than before. And as thou badest me, in troops I have dispersed them about the isle. The king's son have I landed by himself, whom I left cooling of the air with sighs in an odd angle of the isle, and sitting his arms in this sad knot.
Of the king's ship, the mariners, say how thou hast disposed, and all the rest of the fleet.
Safely in harbour is the king's ship. In the deep nook, where once thou calledst me up at midnight to fetch dew from the still vexed Bermoothes, there she's hid. The mariners all under hatches stowed, who, with a charm joined to their suffered labour, I have left asleep. And for the rest of the fleet, which I dispersed, they all have met again, and are upon the Mediterranean float, bound sadly home for Naples, supposing that they saw the king's ship wrecked, and his great person perish.
Ariel, thy charge exactly is performed, but there's more work. What is the time of the day?
Past the mid-season.
At least 2 glasses. The time twixt 6 and now must by us both be spent most preciously.
Is there more toil? Since thou dost give me pains, let me remember thee what thou hast promised, which is not yet performed me.
How now, moody? What is it thou canst demand?
My liberty.
Before the time be out? No more.
I prithee, remember I have done thee worthy service, told thee no lies, made thee no mistakings, served without or grudge or grumblings. Thou didst promise to bate me a full year.
Dost thou forget from what a torment I did free thee?
No.
Thou dost, and thinkest it much to tread the ooze of the salt deep, to run upon the sharp wind of the north, to do me business in the veins of the earth when it is baked with frost.
I do not, sir.
Thou liest, malignant thing. Hast thou forgot the foul witch Sycorax, who with age and envy was grown into a hoop? Hast thou forgot her?
No, sir.
Thou hast. Where was she born? Speak, tell me.
Sir, in Argier.
Oh, was she so? I must once in a month recount what thou hast been, which thou forgettest. This damned witch Sycorax, from mischiefs manifold and sorceries terrible to enter human hearing, from Argier, thou knowest, was banished. For one thing she did, they would not take her life. Is not this true?
Ay, sir.
This blue-eyed hag was hither brought with child, and here was left by the sailors. Thou, my slave, as thou reportest thyself, wast then her servant. And for thou wast a spirit too delicate to act her earthy and abhorred commands, refusing her grand hests, she did confine thee, by help of her more potent ministers, and in her most unmitigable rage, into a cloven pine, within which rift imprisoned thou didst painfully remain a dozen years, within which space she died, and left thee there, where thou didst vent thy groans as fast as mill-wheels strike. Then was this island, save for the sun that she did litter here, a freckled whelp hag-born, not honoured with a human shape.
Yes, Caliban, her son.
Let us take the text in detail. You might have remembered from the last class. Towards the end of last class, Prospero asked Ariel, "But are they safe, Ariel?" referring to the people on the boat. And that question is answered here by Ariel. He says, "Not a hair perished. On their sustaining garments, not a blemish, but fresher than before." He says, not even a hair perished in that tempest. All are safe. There's not even a blemish on their garments, sustaining garments, garments that help them float, but fresher than before. Their garments are fresher than before. And as thou badest me, as you had ordered me, in troops I have dispersed them about the island. As you had told me, I have dispersed them in groups about the island. The king's son have I landed by himself, whom I left cooling off the air with sighs, in an odd angle of the isle, and sitting his arms in this sad knot. So I brought the king's son all by himself to the land on a far corner of the island. He is sitting there with his arms crossed like this, and he makes a sign there like that, and cooling the air with his sighs. And Prospero is very happy with this. And he says, of the king's ship, the mariners say how thou hast disposed, and all the rest of the fleet. And he says, how about the mariners? How have you disposed them? What happened to them? And Ariel continues to narrate his story. Safely in harbor is the king's ship, in the deep nook, where once thou calledst me up at midnight to fetch dew from the still vexed Bermudes. There she hid. So Ariel says, the king's ship is safely harbored and hidden in that deep inlet. Nook is a corner or inlet where the sea comes into land. Where you once called me at midnight to get dew from the stormy Bermuda Islands. Bermudes is Bermuda Islands. So in other words, he says, the ship is safe in a corner of the sea. The mariners all under hatches stowed, who, with a charm joined to their suffered labor, I have left asleep. The sailors are all below deck, sleeping both because of my spell and because of the tiredness that they experienced when handling the ship. And for the rest of the fleet, which I dispersed, they all have met again and are upon the Mediterranean float. As for the rest of the fleet, I scattered them. They've all met up again and they are afloat on the Mediterranean Sea, bound sadly home for Naples. They are all moving towards Naples now. Supposing that they saw the king's ship wrecked and his great person perished. So they are going to Naples. Rest of the fleet is going to Naples, but they think that king's ship is wrecked and the king himself has perished or died. Prospero asks another question. Ariel, thy charge exactly is performed. He's very happy with the charge or the performance of Ariel. But there's more work. What is the time of the day? He says, there's more work. You've done well, but there is more work. What is the time now? Past the mid-season. Mid-season means midday. At least 2 glasses. The time twixt 6 and now must by us both be spent most preciously. At least 2 hours past. 2 glasses, 2 hours past. You remember they used to use hourglasses to measure time. At least 2 hours past. We must treat the time between now and 6 o'clock as precious and waste none of it. At this stage, Ariel is getting a bit restless and he says, is there more toil? Since thou dost give me pains, let me remember thee, that thou hast promised, which is not yet performed me. He says, you have given me so much of work and pain. Let me remind you that you had promised something to me, but you have not granted that. Prospero is getting a bit angry. How now, Moody? What is it thou canst demand? How, Moody? What are you demanding now? And Ariel says, my liberty, my freedom. Freedom from Prospero. Before the time be out, no more. Prospero is getting a bit more angry now. Before the time of our deal is up, stop right there, he says. No more of that. And Ariel pleads, I prithee, remember I have done thee worthy service, told thee no lies, made thee no mistakings, served without or grudge or grumblings. Thou didst promise to bait me a full year. I beg you, remember that I have done good work for you. I have never lied to you. I have made no mistakes, and I have served you without bitterness or grumbling. You promised to shorten my time to serve you by a full year. A full year. And Prospero says, dost thou forget from what a torment I did free thee? Torment is torture. Have you forgotten what torture I have freed you from? Ariel says, no, I have not forgotten, he says. Thou dost, and thinkest it much to tread the ooze of the salt deep. He says, you are forgetting everything now, and you are thinking it is too much of an effort to walk along the bottom of the ocean. Ooze is mud here, tread is step. To run upon the sharp wind of the north, and do me business in the veins of the earth when it is baked with frost. He says, it is now, I have saved you from this witch, but now it is too much for you to run on the cold wind, cold north wind, or do work for me under the surface of the earth when the ground is frozen solid. And Ariel says, I do not, sir. I am not hesitating. I have not forgotten it. I have not forgotten your favor. Prospero continues, thou liest, malignant thing. Hast thou forgot the foul witch Sycorax, who with age and envy was grown into a hoop? Hast thou forgot her? Malignant is evil here. Hoop is, these hoops. You are familiar with hoops, it's round things. And envy is jealousy. So what is he saying? You are lying, you evil thing. Have you forgotten the awful witch Sycorax, who was so old and filled with anger that she was so stooped over? Have you forgotten her? No, sir, thou hast. You have. Where was she born? Speak, tell me. You have forgotten her. Where was she born? Tell me. Sir, in Argier. Argier is a place in present-day Algeria. Oh, was she so? I must once in a month recount what thou hast been, which thou forgettest, this damned witch Sycorax. Oh, was she really? I'll have to tell the story again every month, since you seem to forget it. For mischiefs manifold and sorceries terrible to enter human hearing, for from Argier, thou knowest, was banished. This damned witch Sycorax was thrown out of Algiers for committing so many crimes and performing magic too terrible to even describe. For one thing she did, they would not take a life. She, not this, is this not true? There was just one reason why they did not kill her. Isn't this true? Aye, sir, Ariel responds. And Prospero continues. This blue-eyed hag is old woman here, was hither brought with child, and here was left by the sailors. Thou, my slave, as thou reportest thyself, wast then her servant. So what's he saying? This hag, this old woman with bags under her eyes, was brought to this island while pregnant, and was left here by the sailors. You, my slave, as you yourself have said, were her servant then. And for thou wast a spirit too delicate to act her earthy and abhorred commands, refusing her grand hests. So abhorred is disgusting, and you were refusing to follow her commands. Hests are commands or orders. She did confine thee by help of her more potent ministers, and then her most unmitigable rage into a cloven pine. Because you refused to obey her, she with her more powerful, more potent more powerful ministers. Ministers is spirits. She mercilessly, with merciless anger, she trapped you into a split pine, within which rift imprisoned thou didst painfully remain a dozen years, within which space she died and left thee there. So you were painfully imprisoned for 12 years in that cloven pine, in that split pine. During that time she died and you were stuck there. Where thou didst vent thy groans as fast as mill wheels strike. There you cried, released your groans. You cried like the mill wheel. There then was this island, save for the sun that she did litter here, a freckled whelp hag-born, not honoured with human shape. Groaning, groaning in pain at the same rate that the blades of a mill wheel hit the water. You were groaning in that pine. At that time, the island had no people on it, other than the son that Sycorax gave birth to on the island, that freckled son of a hag. Freckled is spotted. He was covered with spots. And Ariel says, yes, Caliban, her son. So, just to summarize today's session, Ariel says that no one was hurt in the shipwreck. It was also revealed that Ariel was trapped in a pine tree by Sycorax, the witch, for 12 years. Prospero, through his magic, rescues him. And in the end, we are introduced to another character called Caliban, the witch's son. Thank you.